Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Now, another area I want to cover here, I've talked about this a bit, but I'm not sure we can talk about this enough. And that is the fact of, how do you gain any real information? How do you find or move from information into wisdom or truth? And this is a very difficult situation, but I mean, we all face this. And it's almost an unconquerable mountain because of the problems that associate with where everything comes from. So we need to fully understand that people are not doing anything for the general good or because it helps people. Now, there may be part of what you're doing involves that. And but what does it really come down to is that there's so many different pressures on you. The number one pressure is everybody has to make money. And it's not just a little bit of money. You got to make quite a bit of money, which is difficult to do and for the average person. So if you want to make a certain amount of money, well, you're going to have to play a lot of games. Society's not going to give money to outsiders, people who buck the system, people who are running businesses and paying people. Well, you're not going to hire your competition, are you? You're not going to even hire people that you're in conflict with because they want, maybe they even like you and they want to make better products. Well, here's how you can make the better product. Well, I'm not interested in making better products. That's probably going to cost me more money, and I don't want to do that. So you're already an outsider and blackballed. So you can't operate within that system. So as long as everything in this entire world, and by the way, it always has been. If you read throughout history, it's always the rich and the poor. Whoever has money is the people that are prosper, have everything as well. So this is nothing new. And money has been involved in societies from the beginning. And of course, that's why certain things like Marxism and other things from Karl Marx make a lot of sense, where we start taking out the component of money that drives everything and allowing people, of course, the best thing to be done is that you do what your passion is. And that way we'd have great things happening. We'd have fantastic music, perfectly designed homes, other things, because people would be doing what they love and it wouldn't be only based on that. And if you look at the bigger picture, and I've talked to people like this and they don't get it because they're so brainwashed. Well, the point is everybody really should make the same money. And what should happen is that you're doing your passion. Yeah, design the best buildings. Do you deserve more money because you design good buildings? Well, not really. All services done in a country or a town, whatever, all services on the planet are needed. And the minute that people start not paying proper amounts for people, and this becomes the common, you cause all sorts of problems. So, and we talk about this, and nobody wants to deal with the problem, which is why society doesn't work. Well, the main thing, the reason why society doesn't work is corruption. Everybody's paid off. Buildings fall down because people are paid off. Everybody is paid off because some of it is essential, but a lot of it is greed as well. People need lots of money today. So you need to have, if you want to have a few decent things that you see on TV and in magazines, well, that makes you greedy and envious. So you're going to now be corrupt and screw somebody else over so you can get that extra amount of money. That also empowers corruption, organized crime, etc. And that's why the world will never change, because that's how the world works. So everybody is going to be corrupted, bought off. And if you don't go along with it, or you know too much, you will be eliminated one way or another. One of the ways is just make somebody you don't necessarily kill somebody. You put them on the street, you make them poor, all the things that they then control you with. So this is how the world works. And that's why, and it doesn't work in a particular capitalist society, a communist. All the world works the same because the world systems are all the same. They're just tags put up there for people to wrap their heads around it, while you're basically working in this big giant cabal of people that all work together. It's not really difficult to figure this out. So how do you find anything of value if that's it? So that means that you're not going to be able to go against any big business because they're going to go after you one way or another. So there are certain controls and certain balances to a certain degree, meaning the fact that if you're a large supplement manufacturer and you produce things that make people feel better, you go against the drug companies to a degree. But a lot of this stuff, they're all the same companies. So, but you're also going to have to come to the problem is that you can't be honest with people. If you tell people that things help them in life and it's good for them, well, people don't want that. People want miracle cures. So if you don't make a bunch of statements which are basically nonsense, then you don't sell your product. So here the slide down the hill, the slippery hill of corruption starts. Where does that end? And of course, there are problems with results when it comes to certain things that interact with your own bio bodies. You're a biosystem, and your biosystem is different than someone else's. So what works for you may not work for someone else. Now, we're hoping that there is a gross element of success for people, meaning the gross element is the fact that if it works for 20 people, probably works for a lot of people. And out of those 20 people, let's say 3 of them it didn't work for. So the whole idea is, but still the vast majority it's working for them. So this is how everything works in life, but it doesn't mean it works for you. So ultimately in life, it's what works for you and how you can integrate it into your lifestyle. So, and this goes for all sorts of training on any level whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter. I get this all the time. What can you do? What is this? Well, it's not really a fact of what I can do. Unfortunately, I get caught in the role of businessman teacher too much, and I don't have the time to develop to higher levels that I should be doing. And I've been struggling to try and break that time out for years. You have that time. The technologies are proven for hundreds of years that I offer and some thousands of years, and we've refined these like everything does. There's virtually no new inventions. The car isn't new, but it's quite radically different than the first car made in whatever that was. So everybody puts a spin on whatever it is. They add their own new technologies based on what's available. So every models are better than that were before to a large degree. So looking at things in that fashion is an important understanding, and most people don't have that understanding. But it comes down to the fact that it doesn't matter what works, it's what works for you ultimately. And this means you have to go out there and try things. You have to try different systems. Now, obviously, you want to go with systems that have been used by others and the results are basically good, because again, we're assuming that you can do that. Now, one of the problems is that there's been a large amount of misinformation given to people that anybody can remote view. Anybody has psychic powers. Well, this just isn't true. People have certain consciousness levels. Now, do you have that? Is your body and your psychic energetic system able to do psychic things? Yes. Can you do it? Well, maybe. So there is a certain, everybody has the same body. Why do some people's bodies work differently? Why can some people run faster? Well, his body is a little different. But there's more than just a little difference there. There's a whole biochemistry that allows a particular person to run faster, jump, play golf better, etc. And of course, a lot of it's training, but it's also is interest. The point is that people who really excel at things generally started very young. I believe Tiger Woods, the famous golfer, was hitting golf balls at 5 years old. Why? Because Daddy made him do it. He didn't go out to, I don't know if there was a Walmart when he was 5 years old, Kmart. He didn't go out to Kmart and say, Daddy, let's buy these balls and clubs. I like golf. Golf is a boring game. Only an adult is going to take a child and have him do that. So the point is here we go again. His natural abilities, if there were any, were developed because he had parents that pushed him into it. And this goes for everything. If you don't have parents that are supporting you and directing you, and that doesn't mean making you play the piano, plain and simple. If you don't want to play the piano. But if you play the piano for a period of time, maybe you'll develop a like for it. Maybe you'll love it. But the point is your parents are very dependent upon that. Now, doesn't mean you're going to be a great piano player. Means you'll probably be a good piano player. Great comes down to a certain amount of natural talent and bio energies as they grow together to adapt a particular system. Meaning, your bioenergies figured out, your consciousness figured out how to hit a golf ball better, how to play the piano better. So this is not something that you can be taught. Now, everybody can be taught any skill and do it at generally an adequate level, maybe a good level. But we're not talking about masters. Masters still have to practice, they still have to go through it, but they, for one reason or another, have that all evasive natural abilities, which is dependent on many things. Obviously, most really good basketball players are using their bio abilities, their height. So if you're 7 feet, well, maybe you should work on it. And probably those players play maybe 30, 40% as well as a normal heighted person, yet they excel just because of the fact they're big. Because you're in a game that being big helps a lot. But we also understand with people like Shaq, who can't shoot free throws for one reason or another, yet practices all the time. Yeah, but his height and his bigness on the basketball court made him excel. But if he was so good at it all and had such great natural abilities, why can't he make free throws? So the whole idea is that these are all part and parcel of the game involved in it. So people don't necessarily able to learn anything. And this goes in the whole metaphysical success tech area as well. So you may be good at certain psychic practices. Now, I know what it takes to develop the skills within everybody. And it's like everything else. You have to do workouts. You have to do psychic gym exercises. Now, once you do the psychic gym exercises, once you are able to center yourself by using these things, you are now in a state to excel. Now, you can adapt that selling and grow to high states because you have accepted what you're doing, you're interested in it, and you move ahead with it. This is part of, quote, natural abilities. I'm not sure there's too many people that excel at anything that don't really like it. So if you like it and enjoy it, well, I'm doing this just to get X result. Well, I don't think that works well. This has to be something you're kind of into, or the results have to motivate you enough to want to finish that. Well, this is where it comes in yet again. So it's a complicated process of what actually is part of this entire process. So the misunderstanding that anybody can do anything is idiocy. It doesn't work like that. You also have to have the proper trainers. Everybody who's excelled in something has some sort of guide. Now, does that guide make them a master? Well, we can talk about people, which seems to be endless subject here. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had teachers. How did Bruce Lee become a master? Because he worked under a master of one system? No. Bruce Lee, because of his interest, his motivation, and drive for success, money, sex, and power, also looked at other things. What do I have to do? Well, he studied everything to get the edge. He didn't try and become a master of Kung Fu. He put his own system together. This is what masters do, by the way. All masters put their own system together. I don't think there's a single martial artist that hasn't come up with their own system. I believe Chuck Norris has his own system, and pretty much anybody who writes books or teaches will have his own system. Secondly, you adapt a system to yourself. So there may be certain moves in some sort of karate or other things that work really well for you, and that's what you're going to use. Other movements within a particular system may be a big part of that system, but don't work for yourself. So you're constantly editing and constantly making things fit to you. And this goes with everything. So we've been taught in the bozo schools that it's all rote. Well, you got to do what the test says. And I understand that to a degree, but it doesn't make professionals of high quality. It makes test passers. This is why we have so many bad lawyers, doctors, and everybody, is that they're test passers. They did what was needed to be done to pass a test. And, I certainly understand that. A certain level of actual proving of what you can do is very important. So this is what was required to reach mastery. It's about taking information and incorporating that into your own biopsychological consciousness system and then producing that end result. Now, how well you're able to figure something out is how well you're able to do it and adapt it to your environment. So, I hope that's clear. This is really the secrets of empowerment ultimately. Now, first of all, you have to wonder about how all these things work together. And you have to start someplace. So you have to be involved and get training from someone who has established themselves, who knows what they're doing, has good systems that have been tested as much as you can. Well, the problem is that may not be necessarily the most popular person. People tend to go with companies and so forth that have been around a long time, and that somehow states that they are doing a good job. Well, that's a bad assumption. Because they may not. They just, like most things in business, it comes down to having money and support, which may not be based on the fact that your product is so great. You've been able to survive because of the fact that a business needs and not. So, and this usually is because of your connections. If you're published by someone, if you become a household name, well, you automatically get a lot of success. Does that mean that your systems are good because they've hanged around so long? Well, not necessarily. Secondly, is that system something that you can adapt to better? So you have to look around and find out, well, what techniques work for you? And this is something that really is an endless quest because we're all seeking a certain high level of empowerment. But there are foundations again, and everybody wants to jump over these. Foundations are obviously making sure that you're in a consciousness state to do things, and then you have to empower and open up the centers that produce the results you want. Again, this goes back to centering, which is a mental state where you can do everything from. From there, you can do your psychic gym work, and you have to do psychic gym work. You have to pump psychic metal to build a strong psychic muscle so that you are able to achieve what you want. Simple as that. So if you don't do that, it doesn't matter. So once you get to that level, then you can pop in all the different techniques you want. So this is how people achieve high levels of empowerment, and it's just really as simple as that. But the illusion to think that anybody can learn anything is a lie. Yes, if you spend enough time there, you have enough coaches, you will become competent at what you do. You will not become a master. But even that, some people just can't do certain things. So while you may be able to do something, and let's go back to golf, you can play golf okay. Doesn't mean you're playing golf well, doesn't mean you're playing golf to a high level, and it certainly doesn't mean you're playing golf at a pro level or at extremely high level. No, but you're able to, if you like golf, you're able to play golf, and whatever that may be. So, simple as that. But it doesn't mean that you can excel at it. And the fact that everybody has certain levels to trigger within them, yes, this is true, but to what level? And how are you able to handle it? Now, when you get into all these areas, getting it, understanding things in life, getting the higher principles is always very important. But I find this is very difficult. I find that people don't get it. People don't look at things past a certain comical and Hollywood type level, and they really don't excel to the levels that they should be excelling to. And they never get it. They have an egotistical problem. I had this with several people that I've worked with in the past and even the present, which, they don't. You tell them things that are important to operate as a professional organization and to produce high-quality products, and they don't get it. They don't think it's important in their life. They don't think packaging is important. They are not mimicking people who are doing things right, people who are big business, people who are successful, and what they do. They don't get it, and they look at stuff, and while this is important for people to make the ultimate buying decision and open their wallet, they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to get how important certain presentations are. Now, it's always been and taught in business schools, and I'm assuming everybody's heard this, it was really big in the 70s and 80s, of how packaging was the key to everything. If you package something, it looks cool, and it's on a shelf, people will buy it even if the product is inferior. So you can overcome your competition just by having cool packaging. The impression a product makes on you, what you name it, the packaging colors, how it's sealed, everything that goes with it is part of influencing the person there. And a lot of people just don't seem to get that when you work with them. They assume that everything is at this level of being made and presented, and when they go to do it, they jump over that and think, well, that's just part of the process. Well, that's not part of the process. You have to make it part of the process and present things in a professional manner. And people tend to overlook things that are fast use items, such as packaging and so forth, as not being essential. It's the product that counts. Well, yes and no. Ultimately, if the person doesn't buy the product because the packaging is unexciting, well, it doesn't matter how good your product is because it's never tested. So this is all part of the process of getting things as well. Do you get it? Do you understand? I try and do with these lectures is give people a higher understanding of things, and I don't really think very many people get it. Are you understanding the greater? And this is a value problem. If you come from a family that doesn't appreciate fine quality stuff and nice things, you don't get it. And I don't know if you can possibly learn that because you're not really interested in that. And I've seen that with people all the time. They don't have it that way because that's the way their family did it. And they think that their family, for some bizarre reason, knows best. Why is that? I haven't seen people who come from very great families, and they certainly are mediocre successful at that. So the whole idea is I haven't seen any of that really happening, that they buy into that. But this is where they popped out. This is how they grew up, and that's their values, and they never change them. So this is a real problem unless you are there, particularly when you have to do things at distances like I have to do. If you're not there telling them what to do every day and watching what they're doing, they don't do it. They don't think it's important. Plain and simple. And even if you are there, you have to continue because they discount it. They said, oh, that's just your thing, dude. That's what they're thinking. Now, I had this with a guy who worked for me for several years. He never got it. He came from a low-class, sloppy family, didn't understand much of anything, and was basically suppressed on top of it, being kind of a little doofus. So the whole idea with that is the fact that produced very poor products, didn't really know, and didn't say, well, look, this guy is doing it this way. This is how things. I mean, if you think that sloppiness and broken stuff and paint peeling is really good, well, you show me a neighborhood. You go to an expensive neighborhood somewhere and find out if you see all that stuff. You don't see any of that stuff. You go to Beverly Hills or whatever big shot neighborhood is near you, you're not going to find paint peeling, unmowed grass, or anything else. So it is a standard that successful people maintain. And you don't value that because you didn't come from that, but you're not blending into what the people do that make lots of money and who are successful. Meaning, you don't get it. You should look at that and say, well, this is what the successful people do, and this is what I'm doing. And you should change it. You should be in a constant mode of learning, adapting. What are other people doing? How are they doing it? And particularly based on their level of success. People don't do that. You don't get it. And if you have that personality, you're in trouble. And this is a problem that a lot of people have. They maintain the standards that where they're at right now. And the standards you're at right now are wrong. They're not working for you. Yet you expect to use those types of standards to go up to the higher levels that other people are at when your standards are inferior to theirs. And it doesn't work. People don't want that. And that's not what breeds success. So you've got to learn to look at things in life and get it. What are the empowered people doing that are so great? What are they doing? Do you go to neighborhoods that have broken down stuff, tires outside, cars sitting on the street that have been taken apart? Is that what you see in all the good neighborhoods? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Yet people will keep that standard and not think much of it. They won't try for better things in life, and this goes down in every single thing. So this is and this is how your interpretation as an individual and how you bring it into your system is going to allow you to excel in certain areas. So if you want to excel in certain high levels of psychic empowerment, well, you're going to have to change the way you think and act, and people don't do that. You're going to have to change this to your core. And I hate to tell all you little dopers out there, it ain't going to happen with your ayahuasca and your LSDs. While these things may be fun and there are therapeutic uses for these things that can be very important for people, especially mental illnesses, there are no shortcuts. People who think they can shortcut with drugs are stupid idiots. This is perpetrated by everyone I've ever heard talk about this stuff. Certainly, Carlos Castanedas was no genius. He was lucky. Terence McKenna was basically an imbecile who didn't believe in free energy, extraterrestrials, and was a narc working for the CIA, talking about regular shamanism he got out of some book somewhere. So this is the kind of stuff. This guy was an imbecile. All he did all day was smoke dope. And he was able to then, because of his CIA contacts, to move this into seminars and pull off the pseudo-intellectual nonsense he done. This guy achieved nothing, did nothing. I'm not even sure, other than his mushroom book, which was written by his brother, that he even put any books out. So he went and was able to, from his CIA contacts, to go out and give seminars and make money that way. What did he ever do? Where's the Terence McKenna products? It's nothing. Here's a guy that used so much hallucinogens that it created brain cancer. So the whole idea is that. And then, of course, couldn't talk to the spirits for the answer. Well, is that finding a system? And all he did was smoke dope 24/7. Oh, that's cool, man. He's a dope smoker. It's the herb. It's sacred. Yeah. Oh, not like you, man. You drink alcohol. You're just a fucking little bum. You're a drunken scum. Well, the point is that this has been going on for years. And, of course, the bottom line is that most very creative people that we go back hundreds and thousands of years weren't smoking the weed. They were drinking the booze. And that's what all these artists and everything else said gave them their inspiration. So it's nothing new. But the point is that there are no shortcuts to these things. Generally, if these things help you, and I do believe that certain natural drugs, such as alcohol and marijuana, can be a great empowerer at a certain level. Because what they do is disengage you from the depressive, common, unempowered world. So they are an uninhibitor. If you're inhibited by society, you ain't going to get nothing. You're going to do what society tells you to do, and that means you're not supposed to be psychic. You're not supposed to be interesting. You're not supposed to do these things. So if you use an uninhibitor to a certain level, and I've talked about this many times, can be very powerful. So there's nothing wrong with that, but these are not an end to an end. And that's what these people are basically telling you. They're telling you that the cartoons that they generate in their mind, coming from their mind, is somehow coming from somewhere else and from this actual herb and spirit connected to it. Well, the point is it's still going through your dog poo filter. And your dog poo filter is giving you filtered junk. It's not doing anything. Most people that I know who got into all this stuff tend to be people of low morals. They're not very smart. They're the same rotten people they were at 10 that they are now at 30, taking these different trips they're going on. Now, if you find that this helps you, and that is a step in it, but you got to be very careful. It's not an end-all and be-all. It's another step to try and integrate your bioenergies into the bigger picture to empower you specifically. So that's all part of the process, and that's what has to be understood. But you need good guides. If you don't have good information, if you're not being empowered, and you need to connect to energetic, empowered people. If you're not connecting to higher levels of empowerment, what are you connecting to? So words on a page are nothing. Techniques are nothing. Is there something behind that? And that, of course, is why IGOS always connects people to a stream of empowerment. Empowerment that we're connected to and other streams that you're connected to directly. This is the secret. You have to bring in these particular specific energies to you. You want to be a good martial artist, wouldn't you love to have some of the energy and connection to a person like Bruce Lee, who was a master? Now, you're not going to just tap into him quickly and easily, but you can get a energetic bind where then starts to get information from there. You start to think differently. You start to come up with your own specific understandings to make whatever system you're using stronger and better. That's how it works. That's how you increase your empowerment at a fastest possible level. You have to combine with someone who's already a master or be involved with that. Now, you got to remember, if you go to any kind of systems, you're not going to be necessarily connecting to any masters, plain and simple. If you go into systems, and of course a lot of these books are old, the people who wrote them are dead, but what have they created? Have they created any kind of real strong connection to a stream of empowerment that is there for infinity? No, they really haven't. They've written down stuff which is words on a page. Silva, etc. Well, there's some good techniques in Silva, but Silva methods are connected to nothing. He found some techniques, and all you're going to do is get up to a certain technique level. You're not going to connect to him, you're not going to connect to where he got the information from, and you're not connected to a greater empowerment. This is a very rare thing to have, and this is what has always been valued so much in particularly guilds and occult organizations, that you have this line of empowerment. Now this is, that was degraded down into the 80s and 90s as a stream of information. Going back to the pure system, like the pure system ever worked to begin with. But that really is not the point of it. I had many discussions with people about this. Oh, they're going, what back? The great druids who the Romans murdered, every single one of them? I mean, we go on and on here, and that so the whole idea is that what system are they talking about, based on whom and who did what and where? So the whole idea is that that has to be fully understood as well. But what you're talking about is that you're connecting to an empowerment stream. So if you want to be good in Druidism, you're trying to connect to the Druid stream of empowerment. So you can bring that energy into you, which will give you new ideas, new information for your particular self at this particular time in reality, that you then manifest for you, me, myself, and I. Because these are things like that are not group-based per se. Most people are stuck in an individual reality. Now, it would be great to work with a bunch of people who had their own empowerments. The empowerment level of a group put together is very awesome if you can get anybody to work together. But generally, that's very difficult, and they're scattered. But, it's a synergistic reality if we want to move quickly and fast. And that's really what we're talking about. We have a very, very limited time. So you want to synergistically do everything. I mean, you're compiling information. Now, this, whatever it is, so you put together multiple systems that work for you specifically that you can relate to. So instead of staying in one system and trying to force it to work for you. Now, I hope everybody gets that. Very, very important again. This is, of course, what Bruce Lee did. Bruce Lee found out that his systems were kind of sucky. And he was lacking in all sorts of techniques, which made him very vulnerable. It just didn't teach you that. I believe that Kung Fu, particularly what he works in, no grappling is taught. None of that. Jiu-jitsus, which grab you and throw you around, are frightening to punchers and kickers. So you have to fight completely different. Well, he figured, let's incorporate all this. Makes sense. You have to do the same thing. You have to get a bunch of diverse information. And one reason or another, your consciousness will say, hey, gee, I kind of like that technique. Why shouldn't I look at this? Let me try that. And these are the different streams of empowerment. And streams of empowerment you then need to connect to. And then you synergistically put these streams of empowerment together. But you have to be hooked up to a particular organization or individual that's into stream empowerment. This is called a tradition. So when you join a coven, you're supposed to be drawing or any magical group, you're supposed to be joining that particular energetic empowerment that's there, and you're joining and becoming part of it. This is what initiations were all about. We initiate you, not giving you power, not directly, but you're now connected to the powers which you can develop for you. You can't give somebody powers. This is another thing that organizations have been telling people, basically to get people involved and to keep the organizations going, basically get your money. Well, you don't have to study, you can just be empowered by being around us. Well, that works to a degree, but not to the degree that people really want. So, but the power potentially is there if you're hooked up to a real group that has then been hooked up to other groups, and this is the process that goes on. So this is very, very important. So you have to be hooked up to that type of organization. That's why our books and courses and everything else come up with special sigils and other things, which are sending energy into your core being to stimulate that and bring you up to higher levels. Now, if you're not with an organization that does that, you ain't getting the results you need. Unless you have a very personal organization, and this is as rare as hen's teeth, that you meet and you're transferring energies, and most likely all the things that a lot of people don't like that go with that, which is this kind of friendship, high-level friendship base. And this includes the exchange of energies and everything else. And in real groups, there's a lot of exchange of very potent sexual energies, which again has been disregarded since the late and middle 80s by particularly female-driven covens that don't want to be bothered with that. So, since it has such little value to them. So, but this is a big error because it's an exchange of very potent energies. And it has nothing to do with anything but energetic exchange. People want to tie this in, and that's a way they have disempowered you sexually by making you tie this into stupid words like love making. Well, if that's the extent of love, it's pretty pathetic. And of course, with most people, that is the truth anyway. But the bottom line is that's how groups get empowered. You have to exchange energies, etc. But this opportunity is very rare. I mean, it's hard to get groups going, period. There are conflicts within groups. People are not really seeking this empowerment. They're seeking ego things. And then you have one problem after another. So what does this all mean? So, in terms of your personal empowerment. So what you've got to do is find things you can integrate, but you have to connect to these streams of empowerment. This is then brought into your own bioenergies that you then have to assimilate. Now, we connect a lot of people to streams, but doesn't mean you are able to empower yourself with that stream. And to what level? One of the problems is people can't really draw the energy into them well. And this is your own personal problem because of the fact you have so many blockages. You also have a comic book understanding of how the world works, and it's even perpetrated further now, which I find interesting at this particular time in history, of how everything is superhero based. Everything's Marvel. And the problem with that is these are total and complete fantasy characters. There's no shred of credibility with 90% of all the comic book characters. The kind of abilities they have were given to them. They weren't really developed and so forth. Now, some of them are and some of them aren't, but we're talking about in general here. Superman is powerful because he's just on this planet. He did nothing. He's not going to the gym every day. So the whole idea is that Spider-Man, Spider bit him. He didn't do anything. There's some characters who supposedly develop their skills, such as, I believe, Daredevil, who I've always kind of preferred because of that. He has what's considered super normal powers. He's went above the normal. So these are the type of things, but the whole idea is this is the kind of empowerment people want. They want to be bit by a spider, just wake up someplace and be powerful. This doesn't exist. If this did happen, the entire world would be a giant comic book, and the world would be set on edge because of that. So it doesn't make any sense if you really think about it. So getting empowerment, understanding it, and integrating it into your particular life is the key to it. And that means you have to be very open. You also have to get out of yourself. If you think mommy and daddy did anything right, if you think that your teachers did, society's doing things right, well, if you think any of that, forget it. Go be a plumber. Because it doesn't work like that. None of them are doing anything. They're not empowered by anything. They're empowered by their systems. It's as simple as that. And this is one of the major problems with so many areas that people give people credit to. Where they're being empowered not by some, quote, supernatural power. They're being powered by the system itself. And the system itself, since the beginning of time, has never changed and hasn't gotten any better. So if you look at history, you can see how things are pretty much the same, always been. It's the same kind of gangs running the world, and now they're just doing things at a certain more disguised level, but it's still the same gang activity that's been going on since the beginning of time of taking from people that have everything and giving it to the few at the top. And that's how all of the world works. So certainly the great democratic the great democracy of the United States of America has 2% of the people rich and 98% of them poor. I mean, this is a statistical fact, and this keeps going up. So certainly democracy and so-called freedom and all that crap that goes with that didn't work. What's funny is that's the same exact thing as in communism and in China and every other place of the world that has, quote, different systems. There's no equality. The people at the top have all the money and the rest of the people are dirt poor and they're not helped whatsoever. So, I mean, it just shows you how bogus all these thoughts are. So you want to think that you're a capitalist and things are better. Capitalism is just another form of organized crime. So is communism, so is everything else. It's all the same structure. You're just putting different tags on it. You're perfuming it with a particular fragrance or scent that attracts the people that you are coming in contact with. In the end, it's the same stink that everybody puts out. Now, you have to understand that. And if you're going to give too much credit to it, I hear people, I remember one person talking to me saying that, well, my mommy wouldn't let me do that. I was talking about, say, well, you shouldn't take this, you shouldn't take that, or, you got to be careful there. I said, what does your mother effing know? Really? I mean, why are you going by information from someone that has no background of consciousness whatsoever? Because he had a decent relationship with his mother and whatever. She had no background. She was a person that was in the advertising field. What would she know in New York City? What would she know about anything? She knows nothing. So if you start giving people too much credit there, now you have to find the path guided by these higher things I've told you. But if you go to your values that you grew up with, they're all wrong. And you're going to constantly fall back into that. And of course, that's why you ain't got no power. And probably never will. You can read all the books you want, you can use all the devices, but what you're doing is short-circuiting yourself. You're getting to a point and you're going back to old values, old understandings that don't work, and they never will. Now, you have to find what works for you. And, of course, IGOS is your first step. We offer everything. Does everything work for everyone? You got to find there what works best for you. You also have tried and true stuff. You also have streams to connect. All this is what really empowers people. Now, to what level can you go? Well, that goes back to the original concept of this entire lecture. Now, you have the potential to go to unbelievable levels of personal empowerment depending on how much of your reality that you grew up in you can drop. But you're not going to become an empowered person because you believe in Spider-Man. People live in an illusion. It's all the same nonsense. If you're going to believe in any religion, you've already crippled yourself. It's a joke. If you believe in science, it's a joke. Science is a religion, and they have their Bibles. It's called textbooks, and their Jesus is Isaac Newton and Einstein. These are the gods. And you don't say anything against these people because they are gods, and if you do, you're an idiot. Well, the point is I don't see much difference between science-ism and religion because basically it's the same kind of stupid dogma. And it gets you nowhere. And that's why science really has went nowhere. They've figured out a tenth of what they should know. And this has, because even without them understanding what they're doing, has produced some sort of results. But when it really gets down to it, I mean, we don't really have anything in our society based on science that's great. Well, your TVs, do we need TV? We need radios? We need the internet? Do we? Well, I'm not sure we need all that. It's more mind candy for people. We don't have cures. We don't have any way of taking care of viruses or funguses or parasites very well. We don't have any free energy, which our entire world runs on. If the grid goes out tomorrow, we're back in the caveman days outside in the streets with baseball bats and nails in them. The point is that this is the reality that we're looking at. So I don't know what we've achieved with all these gadgets based on a certain class of society, which will make sure that they survive and you don't. I'm not sure what any of this has really done, because there's certainly the most important things in our life is health and followed by long life. Both of those we don't have. The other things we need to do everything is electrical power, and we don't have this either, and we're running short. We don't know how to take care of anything. We're running out of water. The planet is being changed radically. Nothing is changing, yet people are buying more and more expensive junk. So I don't know what science has done to us and how we can hold the flag up and wave it. Oh, it's so great, I have a computer. Who gives a rat's ass? In the end, these things will be monuments of stupidity piled up to the sky. So all of this is nonsense. So we've come nowhere, we've went in. And if you stay in any of these paradigms, any of these little boxes, you're never going to get anywhere. But you have to understand that you're in a little box. You have to understand the fraudulentness of religion and science and everything else. These are not answers. They've been around. Religion has been around for 10,000 years. And to a large extent, there's always been a certain amount of science around, whether it was under the guise of some pseudo-religion or not. But we've had this great explosion of science, which really has only happened in the last 40 years. And where has it gotten to us? We haven't solved any of our problems. And when we do find technology that is problem solving, it's suppressed because of greed. So no, there's no money in cures. There's only money in illness. I mean, that's how sick the human race is. So it goes on and on and on. We don't, of course we have free energy. We have hydrogen power for over 100 years now. That is 100% free energy. And I don't care how, you got all the, it's hard to store hydrogen. Well, it's not hard to store hydrogen, and there are many ways that have come out recently. But so what? What if you have to stop your car every hour to fill it up with hydrogen? So what? It's pure and it's free. But you can make your own hydrogen. Well, you're never going to see that happening. So we have answers sitting right in front of us, and that just has to do with free energy. I'm sure, I know there are hundreds of medical cures as well, and all of them have been thrown in the trash because there's no money in it. So this is the kind of evilness that we work in. Now, you're going to fall in these things. You have to do what your parent company tells you to do. You buy into it. So scientists aren't going to go against the regular science people. They're not going to confront MIT or Caltech and say, well, you're wrong, because they'll be thrown out. They'll be thrown out of the organization, or they'll never get anywhere, whatever that may be. And I was supposed to be being taken care of with tenure, and people don't use their tenure for that. They're just happy enough to make their money and follow the old junky books that are worthless. So we had 500-year-old Newtonian physics, and Einstein, of course, learned everything that he needed to learn in the 1800s. The late 1800s is when Einstein was educated in his schools. So that was what he came up with, his really comic book and stupid things they write. It's amazing the imbecilicness of science that just state the obvious. All of this has to be understood if you want to reach higher levels of empowerment. And these are critical aspects. If you're not studying with the right people, if you're not connecting to these streams of empowerment to guide you past your own personal problems, if you're hanging on to old beliefs and your old systems, it just amazes me. Everybody, and I see this even with wealthy people, they become wealthy and they go back home to where they grew up. They grew up in Tennessee, and all they want to do is build a nicer house in Tennessee. Well, I mean, if you have a lot of money, the world is a big place. Now, if you're doing that kind of stuff, you're living in the old world stupidity. You like certain foods because you come from that country or place. Well, you may have grown up with that, but, there is a level of understanding. And the level of understanding is, what makes a good place to live? Well, there's a lot of things, and most likely they don't fit where you grew up. It's the same thing with food. There's a lot of things about food that just good food is good food. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, but I eat this garbage because I'm from this country. Well, it's ridiculous. And there's nothing wrong with liking your own domestic dishes, so to speak, but good food is good food, and good food that's prepared properly. Now, you see this in the world to a degree, and particularly in the United States, where so many foods have been made out that the most popular food in America, apparently, is pizza. Well, that's about as non-American as you can get. Of course, pizza, obviously, and pizzas and pastas, the most popular food, are all come from the Italians to a degree. But of course, there's the American variant on that. They took things and made it a lot better. And that's what Americans do in general. They may not be the inventors, even though most of the time they really are, but they are the perfecters. And that's what life is all about. You don't want to invent pizza. You just want to make the best pizza you can. And that's what life is all about. And that's a personal judgment on your own part of what is good and what you like as well. But this is what people fall in. So if you're wherever you come from, you're going to eat the food from there and you say that's the best. You're going to, I always found that it's amusing that people would come to a country and then they would, or this was typical, someone would come from France to the United States. You take them to a French restaurant to kind of make them feel at home. Well, this is ridiculous. When you come to America, you don't want to eat French food in America, do you? Well, maybe you're stupid or not. Maybe you're one of those guys one of those Americans that goes to Paris and eats at McDonald's. So the whole idea is that just absurd. All of it's kind of absurd. So you want to experience new things, trigger your inner magical being to find the things that work best for you. And that means you have to go against your social programming. Now, you may like whatever it is where you come from, and there's nothing wrong with that to a degree. But what people do is that's all they do. No matter where they move, they're going to eat that particular type of food. They're not going to try other ones. They're not going to look at the general culture around it. Well, what's here? What can I learn from this? What is these people doing? Yet you don't want to embrace them and throw away your traditions entirely, because there's certain values to what you're doing. On the other hand, you got to understand that value and that particular point of that country is what you get regardless of whether it's good or bad. So if you grow up in Texas where there's lots of cattle, well, most likely you're going to eat a lot of beef. If you grow up in a shore community, you're going to eat a lot of seafood. Well, that has nothing to do whether it's good or bad or indifferent. I like my steak. Well, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact you're eating that because you're there. Just as I said, I see this from particularly, of course, it's hard to track people. I'm sure it's everything, but I see this with movie stars who make lots of money and then they move back to the town or state where they came from. David Spade did this with Phoenix. He's from the Phoenix area. Now, Phoenix is a shithole. It's horribly hot. It's a terrible place. Now, Arizona has some beautiful spots, but it ain't Phoenix. These hellhole hot deserts have nothing to offer you. So the whole idea is, he wants to move back there and move into a fancy house that he can afford, still living in that because he grew up in that. Well, but shouldn't you recognize the fact of the lack of decent weather in that area and move to a place that has decent? I grew up here. I like it. I like sweating to death. I like spending $800 a month on electricity. It's good for me. I came for this. So this is the kind of stupidity that you get. Now, this is how people work. Now, when you try and adapt something else, particularly wanting to become personally empowered, if you fall back on all these things, fall back on your belief systems, fall back on what mommy and daddy told you, you will fail. You need to reject all that and move ahead. You need to be constantly thinking about what's this? What is that person doing? How do you make a synergistic system that is better that you can handle personally? That's the bottom line to everything. Until next time.